Hi, my name is Jackie Ridge, and I want to discuss the PLUS model and using that to help strengthen vocabulary and reading comprehension for our multilingual learners. I want to start off by highlighting the big takeaways from the research about supporting our multilingual learners. So, first, oral language and background knowledge are huge. If students don't have the language or the schema to connect to a text, then comprehension is really going to break down. We also know that multilingual learners benefit from explicit vocabulary routines, visuals, gestures, using clear definitions, and lots of chances to actually use and practice these words. Another key piece is guided academic talk, such as sentence frames, using partner talk, and modeling. Will help give these students the structured practice they need to feel confident using this new academic language. And instead of teaching comprehension skills in isolation, research shows that multilingual learners and our students are going to learn best when these strategies are tied to real content and meaningful tasks, so kind of intertwined with each other. And finally, culturally responsive scaffolds make learning feel relevant and inviting. So when students see their language and experiences honored, engagement and understanding are going to go way up for our students. And all of these elements are going to work together to create a strong foundation in building our students' vocabulary, which is going to, in turn, help build a successful reading comprehension as well. So here's just a quick overview of the PLUS model. This is one of the most effective frameworks for supporting multilingual learners during content-based instruction. So the first step, the P in the PLUS model, is pre-teaching vocabulary. So before students even begin reading or listening, we want to be very intentional about introducing the words that are going to matter most to them in order for them to achieve successful comprehension. So we need to be very deliberate about targeting which words we want to use to pre-teach. This is going to give our multilingual learners and our students the language that they need up front. So they are not trying to decode unfamiliar concepts and also unfamiliar vocabulary all at the same time. We want to help reduce that cognitive load. Next is the L in the PLUS model. This is language modeling. This is where we explicitly show students how to use the academic language. We can show them through using sentence frames, which is I really like using those, modeled responses, and structured conversations. All need to be very deliberate and explicitly taught and shown how to do that as well. The research is very clear that multilingual learners need repeated, supported opportunities to hear and practice the kinds of language that they'll be expected to use during reading, discussions, and writing. The third component, which is the U, this stands for using visuals, which plays a huge role for our students. Visuals are going to help anchor those new concepts, help reduce that cognitive overload, and also make those abstract ideas more accessible and concrete. So whether it's pictures, diagrams, maps, or graphic organizers, these visuals are going to help create that bridge between what students already know and the content that we're introducing and going to be expecting them to use. And then we move into the first S, which is the systematic and explicit instruction. This is where we provide that clear teaching. We want to model each step, guide students with immediate feedback, and gradually release responsibility to them and have them be more independent, but make sure that you are doing it in a way that they're going to be successful. Don't release too early. The idea is to make learning visible and predictable so that multilingual learners are going to feel supported and also empowered to apply the skills on their own. And finally, the last S of the model is the strategic use of native language and cultural knowledge. This is where we really start to pull in that cross-linguistic and really start to pull in from their first language, their native language, to their new language. We want to intentionally connect these new English concepts to what students already know in their first language or from their cultural background. Comprehension is going to increase drastically by doing this. This is going to help validate the students' identities while also strengthening that cross-linguistic transfer. And together, these 5 components are going to make the PLUSS model, which is a powerful research-based approach that integrates language and content learning in a way that is accessible and meaningful for our students. So on the first slide, I just chose an example lesson, just focused on habitats. It's my daughter's favorite thing to learn about. She's an animal lover, so I was like, hey, let's go with this. She's also in 3rd grade, so this is just something that we've been talking about, so it was fresh on my mind. So here's an example of the first step. So first, in the pre-teaching vocabulary, I want to make sure I front load these essential terms because this is going to help give them that language that they need before engaging with the content. I also made sure that I I identified the cognates that went along with it. So I would first just quickly show. These are our 5 words: habitat, environment, shelter, adapt, and survive. In the next slide, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth of how we would make sure that we're providing student-friendly definitions. But essentially, I would choose deliberately targeted words, and then I would go straight into how I would teach it. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So you can see this is one way that I would pre-teach. So before students are going to be asked to read these words, I want to make sure that they have, or before they read the passage or decodable, I do want to make sure that they have the key vocabulary that they're going to need to understand the text. So I am going to I would probably start off by showing pictures of the different habitats. In this case, I chose a forest, ocean, desert. This is going to help activate that background knowledge and support comprehension. This is also going to be a smooth way to connect what they know from their first language and cultures and get that discussion started so they can talk about their experiences with these different habitats, provide what they already know, talk to partners about what they already know. So this is going to help get that oral discussion rolling as well. So these visuals are going to help, like I said, activate that background knowledge and make that connection to make the new words more meaningful to them. Next, I would want to introduce each word and invite the students to help come up with student-friendly definitions. I want to make sure these are student-friendly so they're easier to retain when asked to read it. So I would probably also add another layer of using gestures. So like, for example, I would say shelter, and I would provide a student-friendly definition, but then also invite them to help me create a definition. So a shelter, and we put our hands over our head like a roof. A shelter is a safe place to live. Survive, I would lightly pat my heart, to show my heart beating. So survive would mean to stay alive. Environment, this is what's around us. This is everything around us where plants, animals, and people live. So providing these visuals, connecting it to pictures, connecting it to gestures, making it multisensory, allowing student-friendly definitions, and allowing them that conversation to help come up with the definitions also shows that ownership is going to help them better retain this information. And I also want to be very deliberate about identifying those Spanish cognates when it's appropriate, because by pointing these out, the students are going to be able to use what they already know in their native language to understand the new English vocabulary. So all of these steps, these visuals, gestures, and definitions and cognates work together to make vocabulary more accessible and set students up for success when they are asked to begin reading. All right, we're going to move on to the L. This is the language modeling, which is a critical piece of supporting multilingual learners because it shows students exactly how academic language sounds and works. Before expecting students to use their new vocabulary or sentence structures, we want to be intentional about modeling it for them through things like think alouds and using full, clear example sentences. This helps make the language visible and predictable. The use of sentence frames is going to be especially important for students. Frames are going to be able to give students a structure to plug their ideas into, which is going to reduce that cognitive load, which is going to allow them to focus on the content instead of trying to figure out how to form a sentence. And these frames are also going to create opportunities for repeated practice, which is going to strengthen their oral language and help build that confidence. We also want to reinforce the language orally. First, before asking students to read or write it, that oral rehearsal is going to help our multilingual learners internalize the structure and vocabulary. So they're more successful when they move into that independent work. And finally, language modeling is going to give students consistent patterns that they can rely on during the discussions. When we model academic language and give them sentence frames they've practiced, they're far more likely to want to take risks, participate, and express their ideas clearly. So I'm going to go a little bit more into the sentence frames. These sentence frames are going to be designed to give our multilingual learners structured, predictable language that they can use when they discuss about these habitats. These frames are going to reduce the burden of figuring out English sentence structure and allow students to focus on expressing their ideas and using the new vocabulary accurately. If you notice as well, I was very deliberate about making sure that each frame is also going to reinforce the key vocabulary from the lesson while giving the students those repeated opportunities to hear and produce the language as well. So we're going to move on to the U, and I know that on my slide I have visual supports, but it's actually using visual support, so I apologize for that. But using visuals are going to be essential for our multilingual learners because they make abstract ideas like survival or adaptation easier to understand. So diagrams and cause and effect charts reduce cognitive load by organizing information clearly so students can focus on the new vocabulary and concepts. I would also want to model how to use a visual and how to read a visual. And so I would want to show students how to read the diagram, point out key features, and describe what they see. And use sentence frames such as "this shows" or "I notice." And finally, these visuals are going to give everyone a shared reference point, which is going to help boost that confidence during oral language practice and support fuller participation in discussions. Okay, we're going to move on to the first S, which is systematic and explicit instruction. This is emphasized in the PLUSS model because our multilingual learners are going to benefit from learning that is clear, intentional, and highly predictable. Research shows that our students need instruction broken into manageable steps so they can process both language and content without becoming overwhelmed. This explicit modeling, such as thinking aloud, demonstrating how to use our academic language, and showing the steps of a task, is going to give students a clear blueprint for success. This is going to reduce linguistic load and allows them to focus on meaning rather than guessing what to do. So this guided practice with feedback is going to help students gradually take on more of the work while still feeling supported and consistent with consistent routines and provide stability so the learners know what to expect. So this is kind of an example of when they get to the point where you can kind of start gradually releasing them to be more independent. I would still be very systematic and explicit about connecting this text to the vocab. So first, I would probably provide like a word bank, which you'll see at the top here. I would ask students to go through and just scan and skim to find these words and circle those words. And I would also have them just kind of look through on their own and maybe circle out some unfamiliar words so we can clarify any unfamiliar words before asked to read. And I would not just like throw them into reading it at first. I would want to use like read aloud routines such as echo reading, choral reading, partner reading. Allow them to get comfortable reciting the text before asking them to independently do this. And then at the end, I would want to make sure that I check for comprehension. These can be quick routines. It can be an oral retell, answering questions, written or oral, illustrating the understanding with a simple drawing, or allowing them to engage in that oral language by using a think, pair, and share, and practice discussing. I would also maybe provide sentence frames for that discussion. I noticed, or I learned, or something very specific to the text as well. So again, being able to release that independency to them is going to have to also be very systematic and explicit. And last, the strategic use of the native language and transfer is the last S and an important part of the PLUSS model because it's going to help our multilingual learners connect new English concepts to what they already know. Instead of avoiding the home language, we use it as a learning asset. It's important to activate prior knowledge in students L1 and highlight and connect cognates to make vocabulary easier to learn. I also encourage students to use their home language to brainstorm and clarify ideas, which lowers cognitive load and leads to stronger English responses. These cross-linguistic comparisons, such as the differences in words, in word order, or morphology, help students understand how English works. Partner talk, sentence frames, and the home language support comprehension before students use academic language. These strategies are going to honor students' linguistic strengths and help them access the content more confidently. So, and here are my references, and I appreciate your time in listening to this. Thank you.